Hello, Greg.
Hello, Hugh.
It's our 12/26 full moon video. Merry Christmas.
Right? Merry Christmas to you there.
Thank you. Thanks for the Christmas gift.
Oh, my pleasure.
Um, Today is full moon. The moon's in Gemini, moving into Cancer, and I'm a Cancer person. That's why we do full moon videos. Um, I want to talk about Donald Trump's election team tonight. And here's a book written by John F. Kennedy's press secretary, and it's my stolen trademark back in the 60s, bottom line.
Mhm.
And he made that book with my doctor and my neighbor, Nagy. Lee Iacocca's son-in-law made the cover. The front and back cover was made by Nagy, and he lived next door to me. And Nagy was selling drugs on property I bought from Trump's tax attorneys, Mazar. I moved on to it. Mr. Giles introduced me to Mazar and set me up on a 7 square mile farm. And the CIA and Senate were selling drugs on it. And kids were overdosing in my driveway when I moved onto it. So I stopped the drug trade. They tried to recruit me. And I went to jail for a year when I stopped the drug trade. And it turns out it was the Senate CIA illegal gun trade with New Mexico, with Mexico, Mexican cartels selling them guns you and I can't own. And the property was in Utica, Michigan, off of M53 next to Lionel Trains, owned by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Um,
Did you tell me before that's about when Lionel Richie started to come out? About that time?
yeah, yes, and I was Lionel Richie's publisher. I was an ASCAP publisher at the time. I started to publish Lionel Richie at Tapetronics in Troy, Michigan on cassette tapes. They didn't have CDs yet back then.
Hmm.
But Fletcher Nemo wrote this book while he was President John F. Kennedy's press secretary. And they were building Baker College on property I owned at birth, Hughes Street, in Oakland County, Michigan, where you had all the murdered kids. And L. Brooks Patterson never solved a single murder. And Patterson and my cousin, through a marriage, Perry, were delivering women to Clinton in his governor's office behind Hillary's back, if you remember. It was
Hmm.
Patterson, Sheriff Patterson, and Sheriff Perry who were doing the same thing. And then Patterson, my cousin in Michigan, and Perry, my cousin in Michigan, via marriages, never solved a single murder of a single kid. And my identical twin was murdered by 5 governors when I was kidnapped in 1957, and he was brought back from California with Camille Sirhan 11 years before they framed Bobby Kennedy. And then about 25 years later, Donald Trump's tax attorney sold me property in Utica, Michigan, and the drug dealers was a pharmacist in Utica, Michigan. And then they made Hollywood movie stars out of all the drug dealers I stopped, as they put me in jail and attempted to murder me in jail with razor blades on the end of pencils. They put me in a jail cell with 5 black people who kept trying to murder me. And I was in that jail cell for at least 8 months.
Mm.
And then they moved me after I had 5 teeth knocked out of my mouth fighting these 5 black guys in jail. And this is as 5 black guys chained Karen Kissel, my fiance, to a tree, kicked her teeth out, kicked her in the stomach, and beat her up so bad she had to have her appendix removed. And she was murdered Christmas Day that year. After 5 black men chained her to a tree, kicked her teeth out, and brutally raped her. She was murdered Christmas Day. And then when I went back to,
And so that's why they made the Christmas Karen movie.
yeah, they made Christmas.
Like you said, they mark you with movies, and then you
They
talk
mark
to
all my murdered wives. I've had 4 wives murdered, and they're all marked with movies.
right. Well,
And
and you talked about the leg lamp movie too, about it being a
they do that making fun of me after murdering my family, and my entire family's been murdered 5 times. People never believe this. They think I'm lying, and you've researched all this, and I have hospital records, and it's in your book. You just wrote a history book about my life, and you've researched it all, and all of this is truth, correct?
yeah.
Donald Trump's election team are the very people who kidnapped me at 4 and murdered my identical twin as they brought him back from California with Camille Sirhan and put them in my kindergarten class. I hadn't seen him for 3 years. My aunt put him in California to protect him. From my mother, who was hysterical over my father drinking and cheating on her. They separated us, and I was in a coma for a year. And then I was kidnapped at 4 by Osbourne, Wallace, Long. Stone tortured me. There was a man named Dr. Stone who had absolutely no medical training, and he was running Warren, Michigan, a hospital in Warren, Michigan, performing surgeries. On the day JFK was murdered, Stone illegally cut the bone out of my feet for absolutely no reason. And I was taken to him by Brown, and Johnson was dating Madeline Duncan Brown. And 2 weeks prior, my father had stopped Mr. Brown's drug trade. And the Brown family are my cousins. They lived across the street. Mr. Brown lived across the street with the Martin family. And you had Peter Pan and Mary Martin, who are my cousins in Hollywood.
So Johnson was selling drugs, and so he was sending that signal, "Don't get in the way of my drugs," when he killed the Duncan kids.
Who was?
LBJ.
Well, he was dating the family that was selling the drugs. And my father stopped the drugs because the Baptist man and Brown kept trying to have sex with my mother at drug parties. And my father got mad the last time they asked her to join them in a swinging drug party in Sterling Township, Michigan. And he called the police and reported the drugs. The police came and arrested Mr. Brown, and he went to jail. And that was 2 weeks before John F. Kennedy was murdered. And Johnson had been dating Madeline Duncan Brown, my family member. And the Brown family, their house had burnt down in New Haven, Michigan. So I had given my bedroom to Mr. and Mrs. Brown to live in. And not the same Brown people who my father stopped selling drugs. The same family, but not the same people.
Johnson, I think, was threatening you and your father.
Johnson called my home when the 5 Duncan kids were murdered. They murdered them with arsenic. And they told the world that 5 kids sat around the kitchen table and ate rat poison. Big lie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they made all the public schools put Agatha Christie's book, Arsenic and Old Lace, in all the public schools, and they made it required reading for all the kids all over the country. And
Yeah.
I'm the Christie family.
Right.
Mrs. Christie stole my inheritance with Gardner and Gonzalez when
Your
Mrs.
hands. Yeah.
Gardner died.
Mm-hmm.
And it was over $1 million. They forged my name on stock and took my inheritance. And then they were murdered. And Gonzalez was married to an 18-year-old. She was dead a week later, and he ran off with my inheritance. And he was a renegade biker.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the bikers that planned the murders of my 4 wives and hired out as hitmen when I divorced the Westhouse family.
Well, this is how we know that that Friday the 13th part two there was when Jason's mother says she's friends with the Christies. That's why that goes together so well.
They have always marked me
Mm-hmm.
in Hollywood movies because my family was Gardner, and Gardner gave the world Make Room for Daddy, the first TV series. And then from that, you got St. Jude's for Children. As they murdered my twin, they beat my twin to death and dumped his body in Pennsylvania by Darrell Hall's house. So the people who kidnapped me, Osbourne, Hall, Long, Wallace, Stone, Anderson, Andrews, and beat my identical twin to death after torturing us at the age of 4. They were all part of Donald Trump's election team.
Yeah, Osborne's running his campaign still.
Correct. And this is who Donald Trump really is. And then Donald Trump's tax attorneys sold me the property where the illegal Senate gun and drug trade was going on with the Mexican cartels.
And didn't he give Stone a pardon or something like that?
And all of this is in your book, and you've researched this and you know it's truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I lived in Tennessee, where they murdered 2 of my wives, they dismembered and murdered 2 of my wives while I lived in Tennessee, actually 3. But one of them was murdered in Michigan, not in Tennessee at my home. Terry Heath, her family protected New York in 1775 and 1776 for my family, George Washington, from the British before we were a country. And 2 off-duty policemen kidnapped her out of her CPS Head Start office, drove her across 5 states, and then the day she was murdered, she told me they were stalking her again on a ranch in Tennessee. And I'm sorry I'm coughing.
I'm aware you've had a tough few weeks here lately.
I was poisoned. I'm grateful to be out of the hospital. If somebody fed me acid in food, and it burnt my insides. And, I bought the food at a Walmart deli.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's telling me to sue them, but
Yeah,
I'm not gonna.
I got to hit the mute button here for 1 second.
And I have no idea
Okay.
why my video it's trained on you, so I don't think people can even see me
Huh.
up above you. And
Yeah, on my side, we're side by side. Yeah. Somebody knocked on my door. They didn't know I was making a video. So I had to mute it and let them know. But yeah, we're side by side from my end here. And normally it alternates when one of us talks. That's who it shows. And now this time
Yeah.
we're side by side.
I
So,
have no idea what the video is gonna look like.
but at least they can hear you talk, even if they have to look at my ugly mug tonight.
So anyway, Fletcher Neville, he wrote 7 Days in May, and he was Kennedy. It said the next 6 presidents, press secretary right in the White House. And then as 2 of my wives were murdered on the Manning Ranch, and Manning co-created the JFK archives. Cherry Heath and Victoria Milan were dismembered and murdered. And I had to bury my wife's missing body parts because they were dismembered as torture as they were sodomized.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this is true. I have the hospital records.
Yeah.
And I found 2 of my wives dead and gave them CPR, one on July 4th, another on Christmas, another one was murdered Halloween Eve by 9 Americans hired as hitmen. And they worked right in the hospital to murder them both after I gave them CPR, revived them. 35 days later, they murdered them a second time. And
I have to wonder if Osbourne had anything to do with that too, just based on that.
well, I already know that he did, because when I moved to Tennessee, before I moved on to the Manning Ranch, the Osbourne family moved down. They flew from Alaska and took over the RV park.
Right.
The Tennessee Valley Authority hired them to run the park where I
Well,
was staying after I moved there,
right.
1 month after I moved there.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as they moved there, it was Osbourne married to the Cotton family, another senator,
Mm-hmm.
and Adrian Osbourne, and they were married to Metcalf. And these people told me that I needed to be baptized, but I was running a ministry and I was raised to be a priest, and I'd already been baptized 5 times. They told me I needed to be baptized after raping me and murdering my twin.
Yeah. So the same Osbourne family that raped you was running a ministry in Alaska, follows you to Tennessee, and
They stole all my Kennedy letters out of my
stole your
crib.
Kennedy letters. And then Terry was hung in her dog's leash. And then now you have a movie called Ozzy, about a kid's cartoon about a dog that runs away and has to find its friend. It's amazing how well they've marked every little detail
No,
in the
they
movies.
they plan all of this and they hide me in the Hollywood movies and they pretend I don't exist. And you know I'm related to all the presidents on U.S. money.
Right. And earlier you were talking about Perry, and the day that it happened, the band Perry shows up, and now you have Katy Perry running around.
Yeah, and you know, Katy Perry covered up the murder of my wives in the Greenville Sun when I found them murdered with the National Guard. And then they
Well, that
hid
was
me.
band Perry. Yeah, that was the other Perry. Yeah,
They're the same family.
yeah,
And
I'm
that's
sure it
my
is.
only living wife, Westhouse. She's still living. I divorced her because she wouldn't stop selling drugs. And her
Hmm.
family attempted to murder me 3 times. So I divorced her.
Right, right.
And then my
I
next,
I would think like because Katy Perry, that's not her real name. That's her star name or whatever. I think her name's Katie Hudson or something like that. Something Hudson.
and then, and
The
then,
they
and
named her
then,
Perry
and
for that.
then, and then Westhouse lived next door to Iggy Pop and Ted Nugent, where my first wife, her father was mayor of East Detroit. And her family attempted to murder me 3 times. So I divorced her. She wouldn't
Hmm.
stop selling drugs to the renegades and the outlaws. And they introduced me to Whitey the week before James Hoffa disappeared. Her mother was with Hoffa at the Sly Fox. And then the FBI detained me because I bought a car from Whitey in the Outlaws. and the car broke down leaving his house. So I junked it and went and bought another car. And I
Mhm.
really needed a car because I had just adopted 5 kids. And all of
Yeah.
this is interrelated. Um, Anderson, one of my rapists, makes movies with the Nugent family, Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
Um,
What was the one I posted? It was from the 70s about a private eye named Anderson. And then
yeah,
in the
I don't
Matrix,
know.
you have Mr.
There's so
Anderson.
many of them. All the news correspondents and all the London news. Wallace, Osbourne works for Senator Graham, who owned Detroit Media, Channel
Marie
4,
Osborne, yeah.
and radio stations. And Osborne and Bowe work for Senator Graham. And Donald Trump is the Bowe family's big hero.
Mm-hmm.
And her father gave Epstein his job working with kids in Manhattan that he sold to people like Donald Trump and
Yeah, can you imagine making Epstein a school teacher? But that's exactly what Attorney General Barr's father did back in the
and then
70s.
the entire California lawyers bar, as Roseanne Barr told everybody Hollywood was raping her. She was working for Senator Graham on Channel 4 and lying to the whole world, covering up the Oakland County child killers.
Mm-hmm.
And Al Brooks Patterson was outside of Governor Osborne's house as my twin was murdered
Right.
by 5 men. 5 grown men beat him to death. And this has been one great big cover up since 1957. And Al Brooks Patterson was sitting in the driveway. Al Brooks Patterson is my family. When I told one of his nephews about him being in the driveway as my twin was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
his mother was Mrs. Patterson. He confronted his Al Brooks Patterson about it. They put him in a jail cell and hung him in his own belt that night. He was 17. His name was Ted Oglesby. And he was
Yeah.
my friend at Warren High. And then my friend at Warren High, Russell, appointed James Garrison and Manning to head the Warren report.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved to Tennessee, the Osbourne family set me up on the Manning Ranch. And that's where they murdered 3 of my wives. And I'm just tired of my life. I'm 70. They stole, my trademark, bottom line, from me. And the FBI did that. I lived on Hoover Street. Hoover funded my public school, Hoover Elementary. Then Webster funded my high school. And when they stole my trademark, Webster put the word in his dictionary, and a word in the dictionary can't be a trademark, as they stole it out of the Library of Congress. And all of this was done by FBI directors as they murdered the Kennedy family.
Mm-hmm.
And Hoover had hired my cousin, Marilyn Monroe, whose real name is Baker. And I'm the Baker family because of Gardner being my mother's sister. And Gardner is Baker also. And then my cousins are Bill Gates. Joe Jacobs was my father-in-law. He gave Gates the software to make the first computer at my first wedding. To Nancy Fredericks, and the world got Fredericks of Hollywood. From Hollywood, after they stole my trademark, bottom line, and used it to study out of the entire California lawyers bar. And those people are now Supreme Court justices and judges all over the country. And they stole this trademark from me over 55 years ago and used it to pass the bar exam. As Roseanne Barr's father gave Epstein his job in Manhattan. And if it's not her father, it's her uncle. It's the Barr family.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah.
Uh, it's just unbelievable what they
And Barr
did.
works for Graham too. She's the CEO. Emily Barr runs the CEO of Channel 4,
Yeah, Graham
Graham Media.
Media. And then the drug dealer on the farm I bought from Mazar, Trump's tax attorney, was run by Hank. And on Channel 4, as soon as I called the FBI and destroyed the LSD and cocaine and marijuana on that farm,
Mm-hmm.
you got Help Me Hank on Channel 4 News.
Yeah.
And Help Me Hank is still on Channel 4 News.
Help Me Hank
And the other
program.
drug dealer was a guy named Bucky Larson. They gave you Bucky Larson, born to be a star in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And the Blanchard family were selling his drugs. Two of Blanchard's family members. And a guy named Wayne Danielson, Nagy's son-in-law, or not Nagy's, Lee Iacocca's son-in-law, Nagy, was picking up drugs and selling them all over Detroit with Danielson. And they had a CIA gun and drug trade going. And I thought it was just a local drug trade, and it turned out to be the CIA trade. That week, they sent a Haiduka Marine Corps to an area, and they murdered 3,000 people that afternoon when I stopped the drug trade.
Wow. Wow.
And
Now,
then they put me in jail, the guy that stopped it, as they kidnapped my daughter. They kidnapped my daughter with one of the Kennedy girls off their school bus when they were 6 or 7 years old. And they left them locked in an earth mover. They were going to bury them. You understand this?
yeah.
As they murdered the judge that gave me custody of my daughter, Judge Hunter Sterrett, Selfridge National Guard. And then Cheney wrote a song in London about murdering my wife, Victoria.
Mm-hmm. We wrote that down, but I can't seem to recall it from memory.
10 years,
Yeah.
10 years before they murdered her, they wrote the song in London. And then, on 9/11, where they covered up all the theft of my life, my business, the receipts, and my civil rights case in the Pentagon, in the office they blew up. Giuliani was a Knight of the Queen. Are you aware of that?
No, I didn't know about Giuliani. He
I sent
was
you
Sir
an email
Giuliani.
about that. He's been a Knight of the Queen.
Hmm.
And then I told you that
Wouldn't be
Israel,
surprised.
London, and Americans blew up the Twin Towers. It was never Saddam Hussein. My name's Hugh. I grew up on Hoover Street. You got the Hoover Dam and President Hoover. And my baby pictures were taken on 9/11, 1953
Right.
by Eastman Kodak and George Towers. And they planned blowing up the towers before they built them as they murdered the Kennedy family. And there's no lie in this.
Right.
I have all these documents from the federal government. I still have my civil rights case, but they blew up that case in the Pentagon. So I never went to trial. And that was against the Groves family, the engineer family who built the Pentagon, because they were stealing my trademark, bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who stole my trademark were DuPont, Claire Cummins,
Right. I don't know how well anybody can see
Kennedy's
it,
press secretary. That's not showing up here.
but that figures. Oh, there we go.
And then he wrote 7 Days in May, and 7 Days in May is about, what's that about?
Well, that's about a
And he wrote that,
assassination plot taking over the government.
yeah, and that he wrote that before they murdered Kennedy, didn't he?
And then interesting, there's another story that's almost just like it called the Osbourne. Not you take the Oz off, but it's the Bourne conspiracy. Osbourne,
Yeah, Yeah. And then Elvis Presley's publisher was B.B. Bourne. And B.B. Bourne and Mills offered me a whole lot of money not to become a New York publisher at ASCAP and BMI because they had already planned 9/11. They tried to get me not to renew my publishing license at ASCAP and BMI. She showed up in a mink coat, took me out for dinner, and begged me not to renew my publishing license. You got this picture? And
Yeah.
then Mills filmed Bush on 9/11 as the first plane hit the first tower, and they had murdered my judge, Hunter Starr, who gave me custody of the kids they kidnapped from me off the property I bought from Trump's tax attorney. And they murdered my identical twin, and my whole family's been murdered 5 times since I was born. They murdered my mother's entire family leaving church, Fuller and Gardner, and Harold Harris, my mother's whole family.
Yeah.
Her sister Lucille became B.B. King's guitar.
Yeah, he called it Lucille, yeah.
Yeah. And Lucille, and her whole family, they were murdered leaving church.
BB King, like BB Street. Yeah.
On Clinton
BB
Road.
Netanyahu. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I own BB Street. And you have BB Net and Huey. Sharon Collins tried to marry me twice. She asked me to marry her twice.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, when I told her no, she married Anderson, and then she died at 35, married to Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson again. There we are.
And there's Anderson, who kidnapped me and murdered my twin.
Lois Lane's father on CW. There, that's Mr. Anderson also.
Yeah. The Anderson family marks me and everything. Andrews was a judge on TV in Detroit, like Judge Judy back then.
Mm-hmm.
And these people murdered my twin. And then they took over all the news run by London. Fox is owned by Rupert Murdoch in London. It's London News.
Right.
CBS is Canadian Broadcasting System. It's London News.
It's London News, yeah.
CNN is run by the BBC. That's London News.
London News.
And then I forget if it's ABC or NBC is owned by London. So all the major news stations are owned by the London throne.
Mm-hmm.
As they make Giuliani a knight.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty obvious just listening to them. They've got all British newscasters.
Yeah, and they made Mick Jagger a knight after they caught him with all those drugs crossing the U.S.-Canadian border, as he sang about killing President Kennedy. And
yeah, the song said the lyrics were like, "Who killed the Kennedys? After all, it was you and me." And when you were there at the concert, he looked right at you and said, "It was Hugh and me."
Yeah, my union signed the paperwork so he could do his concert, Steel Wills, and sing that song. As they murdered the Kennedys.
Unreal.
And then, I posted Christmas cards from Mick Jagger.
Yeah. Yeah, he sent you Christmas cards.
Yeah.
Unreal.
I'm an ASCAP publisher with 28,000 worldwide entertainment contracts. America and Israel stole with Britain. And they had to hide the theft.
Yeah.
When they murdered my mother's family, they owned the patents for buses, vans, milk trucks, and the Fuller transmission that we make in Battle Creek. And they have built Hollywood. Gardner and Fuller built Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And made the first TV series. And my mother, they murdered her whole family when she was 7. So she didn't know who she was.
Right. Yeah, she didn't understand her heritage and who all her relatives were.
The only person in Hollywood that tried to help me was Steven Seagal.
He's Russian, so that makes sense. Okay.
Russia has always been my family's allies. They've always been our ally in every war, including 1776 and the Revolution.
What did Steven Seagal do that stood out?
When I stopped the illegal Senate gun and drug trade, he wrote a movie about the stopping drugs worldwide,
Okay.
and he marked my life in roundabout ways and protected me via Hollywood.
Wow.
And he's Russian. He works for Putin. And this is as Russian mafia took my bass player, Tony de Blasio's name, as he died of a heart attack. And he was my bass player for 50 years, and he was born in Brooklyn, New York.
And turned him into the mayor of New York. Yeah.
Yeah,
Turned that
behind
name into the mayor.
Giuliani, the night of the Queen.
And that wasn't even the mayor's name, was not de Blasio. He changed it to that.
Yeah, and they won't allow me on,
Unreal.
Greg, they won't allow me on any American news. And you know, I was the first guy the FBI detained for Jimmy Hoffa's murder.
Hmm.
And Jimmy Hoffa is my family member,
Right.
but I'm not allowed in any news. And, you know, I've had 4 wives dismembered and murdered on 4 holidays. No news about them, not even an obituary about 4 dismembered, murdered wives. And then they murdered all my kids, 4 and 5 at a time.
Hmm.
In 2017, as I sat in Al Brooks Patterson's office, they murdered 5 kids in my family at the same time in 2 states. They murdered 2 kids in Indiana, where I was staying at Vredenberg's house, who ran the
Right.
9/11 Truther site
Right.
and never put me on Truther radio like she said she was gonna. I stayed at her house for 11 months. She never made a single video and said my truth.
And then she stole your donations, or seems to have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she put up a GoFundMe so I could go to Al Brooks Patterson's office. And while I sat in Al Brooks Patterson's office, they murdered 5 kids in my family in 2 states. In Indiana, where Buttigieg is governor,
Right.
or senator now, whatever he is.
Oh, he's head of the Department of Transportation now because Joe Biden appointed him. But he
And
was
then we
a
found
mayor
in
before that.
Hollywood, the tax assessor keeping track of my mother and her grandfather because they stole the properties in Hollywood from my mother's family as they murdered them all at church
Hmm.
when she was 7. And they're still selling those properties and taxing it to my dead mother's body. And
Yeah.
he's a gay man married to a man from Michigan. He went to Michigan State University,
Hmm.
just like Anderson and the other guy.
This con's so huge, it's amazing to me.
And the people who kidnapped me were all gays, remember?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
In 1957. And then Donald Trump, he says he's better than George Washington because they make fun of me in Hollywood with all these movies as they murder my family 5 times.
But it makes person. He holds that big old gay flag, just like the rest of them, and he's proud of it. I mean, good night. The Proud Boys are his friends. I mean, what is pride? That's a whole gay theme in and of itself, regardless of what they say. And then you find out the people running it are all British. It's just part of the British con. Yeah, so yeah, it's real obvious that he's just part of the same British
And now
homosexual.
it came out in court that Antifa was Trump supporters.
Yeah, yeah, they were pretending to be Antifa and they were Trump supporters. Exactly the opposite of what he said. Yeah.
And in the news today, I see Ammon Bundy,
Okay.
who tried to get me to bring all the patriots to mail here where I live now.
Yeah.
It's right around the corner from my ranch here. And that was the same con they used on Mr. Harris at Ruby Ridge, and they put Mr. Harris in jail. They were trying to put me in jail after murdering 4 of my wives.
Did he
And
try to sell you
Bundy
a sawed-off shotgun too?
Ammon Bundy was behind that.
Yeah.
And then, Cooper kidnapped my daughter, and I live off of the Rogue River, and supposedly he robbed a few $1 million and jumped out on the Rogue River
Yeah,
to live
right there where you're at.
after
Yeah.
kidnapping my daughter. And Cooper went to school with me.
Yeah, you actually went to school
He
with a DB
died. He
Cooper.
died. He hit a telephone pole in front of Gene Hamilton's Chevrolet, and Hamilton's on the $10 bill. And Hamilton is my family, just like Jackson and Washington and Grant. I grew up with all of these people. We'd all play together. I grew
Yeah,
up.
the FBI put all these famous families in your school, which just
I grew up with Lincoln.
amazes
The
me.
FBI funded my school system, and then they stole my trademark. $3 trillion they stole from me. And then Webster, the director of the FBI, put the name bottom line in his dictionary that year as they funded my school system. And my band, Mitch Ryder writing the songs for Elvis and Bourne Publishing, my brother-in-law. He was writing the songs Elvis was singing in Vegas in the movies. And then Gardner married Sinatra. So I'm a publisher. Sinatra and Ted Kennedy made me a publisher in New York at ASCAP and BMI with Morton Gould in a federal court, and they steal the federal license, $3 trillion in theft. And you know yourself, I own the contract for even the Joker song.
Yeah.
Sondheim, Sending the Clowns. That was worth $300 million, one contract. And I had 28,000 multi-million-dollar contracts they stole from me, as they stole my trademark and my federal license, and they even stole my name worldwide, Hugh Squier, and my IRS licenses. And that's what Jim Mars was looking into when they murdered him.
Yeah.
Judith Baker married into my family. And then she told the world she cheated on him with Oswald.
Yeah.
And that's a big lie.
Yeah, she was setting up Oswald.
Osbourne was Oswald's bunkmate in the military.
Right.
And Osbourne is her friend.
Yeah.
And Baker
And Trump's friend.
Those people that married into my Baker family, they made the gay flag.
That's right. Yeah, you look up who created the rainbow flag, and they say it's a baker that lives in Key West, is who they say now, but it was actually a baker that you knew.
Yeah, 11 Baker family members who married into my family lived with me just before they murdered my wife, Victoria. And Major Tom Garrett was sending me FBI computers from Clinton's White House offices.
You know, it just occurred to me that the FBI being Baker, that means the FBI created the rainbow flag.
That's correct.
Which makes a lot of sense when you had Hoover running the FBI and he was
Hoover
gay.
was gay.
Right.
And Hoover funded my Hoover Elementary School. Webster funded my high school, Warren. And then you have the Warren Report. And when I moved to Tennessee, Osbourne put me on the Manning Ranch, which is the Warren Report. Manning and Jim Garrison, my alumni in Warren, Michigan, were appointed by my friend Russell. And Russell died sitting at a table with me at Sherry's Lounge. And then when on the day Robin Williams died, I came back home and found Sherry Waldo dead, and they renamed the Waldo Bridge to Robin Williams Bridge. And in the Paradise Fire, they murdered the people Smith, Bledsoe, Lawson, who framed Oswald in the Warren Report.
Unbelievable.
After murdering my wives.
Wow.
And I'm the only guy on earth that knows these things. And you just wrote the book and you researched all this and you know it's true.
Yeah, Lawson again. They'll take that. You mentioned Born to Be a Star. That's a song, I think, isn't it? And then you have Brie
I
Larson
went to
on
school with,
Avengers.
I went to school with the Lawson family. The
Okay,
Lawson
Larson.
family
Yeah,
lives
but
next door. The Lawson family lives next door to me now. The ranch I bought from Donald Trump's tax attorney, Mazar, Nichols and McVeigh were buying drugs off it.
right, right.
And all this is in your book.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, you
And
had
Nichols,
Bucky Larson, right? Well, get this.
when I moved out here to California, Nichols moved next door to me with Chapman. She was married to Chapman, John
Yeah.
Nichols' daughter, who lived next door to me for 30 years with McVeigh. And Chapman murdered John Lennon. You got this picture?
Yeah, it's the same circle, same
Yeah,
drug.
they follow me around the country.
Right.
And then there's
Now,
police. The
now
power.
you don't know this, Hugh, because you don't watch these movies, but you know Bucky Larson, right? Well,
Yeah.
think about this. In the Avengers movie, you have Bucky, who is Captain America's best friend, and Brie Larson, who is Miss Marvel with the big star on her chest. You see how they just keep repeating it over and over
No,
again?
yeah, and I don't exist. And I'm George Washington's family. And then Trump says my trademark right on the White House lawn, bottom line.
Yeah.
And at the same time says he's greater than George Washington, making fun of murdering my identical twin and torturing and raping me when I was 4. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they want to get rid of the Constitution and put my family's Bible as the law of the land.
Mm-hmm.
And the Pope is head of the Council of Churches, and he's communist. I mean, really think about this.
Right.
And Giuliani in all your news comes from London. It's all run by London.
Yeah, I don't know if they're more communist than they are Nazi. I mean, good gosh, they helped the Nazis in World War II escape Germany, right?
That's because and this is why Hitler wanted to restore the Pope across Europe.
Yeah,
And now they're trying to do that. They're trying to do what Hitler was doing in Europe here in America.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
they call it the New World Order.
right.
Bush started that, the homeland.
Homeland, yeah.
And you know, George Bush made Hitler's uniforms and parachutes and sold them cyanide. George Bush makes cyanide down by Trump in Florida for the U.S. mints. And they washed the coins before they zinc plate them in cyanide. And George Bush's family sold the cyanide to Saddam. He said that Saddam had. And this is a big lie. Saddam went in the United Nations, said he destroyed all of it, and they never found any because he did.
Right.
So they framed an innocent guy saying the truth, murdered him, as they murdered 20 million innocent people, women and kids.
Right.
They carpet bombed Baghdad.
Yeah, even Saddam Hussein didn't kill that many people.
Think about
Right.
Baghdad. It's Bag H dead. Sad damn Hugh saying, I'm Hugh. I'm saying, sad damn, the Hoover Dam. They mark me with world leaders. Sharon Collins is Sharon. Sharon.
Yeah.
I worked with Jim Gold in the gallery as he played on the radio all across the country. His brother was my lead guitar player. So was G. Savage. Rush murdered my brother-in-law with drugs. Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
These are all Trump's buddies.
Mm-hmm.
So
you have Rush Limbaugh, but you also have Michael Savage on the radio.
Gold in the gallery is gold in my ear.
Mm-hmm.
When they murdered my uncle, Admiral Byrd, Truman and Eisenhower did that because he confronted them about drugs they were selling with World War II and Korean guns they were selling, just like Noriega was doing, just like the Brown family was doing.
Yeah.
And this is the real history of America.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the guy that knows this. And you know yourself, they've tried to murder me dozens of times.
Including here recently. Mm-hmm.
And then yeah. 2 weeks before Christmas. They fed me acid and food from Walmart. Clinton owns Walmart. Clinton was stealing enriched uranium off of my family's properties and selling it in Ukraine, remember?
Yeah.
And you know all of this is truth. You've researched it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Patterson and Perry, my cousins, were bringing hookers to Bill Clinton when he was Arkansas governor, as the child killings were happening. And they
Yeah,
never
Katy
solved
Perry,
they never
Van
solved
Perry.
a single murder. And L. Brooks Patterson watched him beat my twin to death.
Yeah,
You got all this?
I do.
This is the real history of America. And we can end this here, Greg. Merry Christmas to everyone. And
All right.
so, Greg, you went to college to be a minister, right?
Yeah, and at the place called by Anderson again, Hiles Anderson, and they're making movies now about it. And the guy that's doing it now, they used him. I was already his friend on YouTube, or subscribed to his channel on YouTube for the last couple years now, and his name is Squire, like Squire Zinsky, and they're putting him on the same channel as the on Discovery Plus on the same network there that just made videos about Gretchen's disappearance
And
here.
they'll hide me. And I went to school with Zimmerman, who investigates Gretchen Fleming's disappearance. And Fleming wrote The Wizard of Oz and
Mhm.
James Bond, Ian Fleming. And it's all
And Oz is all about the rainbow. Wizard of Oz is all about that rainbow.
yeah, and it's all related to my life and being kidnapped at 4 as they
Mhm.
murdered Admiral Byrd. I was kidnapped on the same day they murdered Admiral Byrd. Pratt cut my father's hands off, and the Twin Towers were built on Pratt Street
Pratt Street. Hmm.
after they murdered the Kennedy family at the
Right.
Trade Mart in Texas.
Yeah, at the trademark, right, where they stole your trademark. Yeah, and you might as well call the movie "The Wizard of Osbourne." It's
Yeah, yeah. And this is nothing but crime, killing kids all across the nation. They killed the Duncan kids. They've killed over 24 kids in my family. They killed all the Oakland County kids. The last kid they killed in Oakland County was President Ford's kid, Timmy King. That was his real name, King and Gardner.
Mhm.
And it's just unbelievable who these people are running the Senate and the White House.
Mhm.
And now London runs all of America's news. And they want to get rid of the Constitution and put my family's Bible. King James is my cousin, and he authored that Bible to control people.
Mhm.
It's all about controlling people. That's
Yeah,
why we have
it
a
works.
constitution that says they can't tell me what I have to believe. But now the Senate is trying to tell me, and the House, I have to believe in Christianity or I can't live in America. By trashing the Constitution and making the Bible the law of the land. And this is what these criminals are doing. And Trump is right at the top of them
Yeah. Yeah.
with the people that kidnapped me and murdered the kids in Oakland County.
And
And
supporting
L.
both
Brooks
sides,
Patterson
supporting
covered
the
all this up.
homosexuals.
L. Brooks Patterson covered all this up for 25, 30 years because he got 25 million a year in taxpayer money to solve murders he never solved. And he knew who murdered my twin. All the way back in 57, he was sitting in the driveway as they murdered my twin. Anderson, Osbourne, Stone, all the people that support Trump murdered my twin and the kids in Oakland County.
Wow.
And they're all Judith Baker's friend. And Judith Baker married into my family.
Hmm.
And Hoover hired my cousin, Marilyn Monroe, Miss Baker,
Yeah, to spy on the Kennedys.
on the Kennedys. She was having sex with John and Bobby. She even called Jackie and told Jackie that she was going to marry John, her husband. And then Jackie ran to on assist. Gee, I wonder why she ran to on assist as they raped me and murdered my twin.
Yeah, she's exposing all the homosexuals.
Right. On assist.
Mm-hmm.
Have a good
You too, Hugh.
New Year's is coming.
Take it easy, and hope you feel
They'll
better
send
soon.
this to you in the usual way, put it up on YouTube. They'll probably call us a liar again. And you know I got documents that support everything I say right from the federal government.
We can
And
show it
here's
over and over.
Kennedy's press secretary using my stolen trademark.
Yep, we got the books. Yep.
He wrote the book about killing Kennedy the year before they killed him.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.